Hey you guys, so I've got a game that I'm going to share with you that I just played this morning. It's a 30-minute game and it's against a player rated in the 800 to 900 range. And what's interesting about this game that I think will be helpful is that I'm going to use an opening that I've really never played before. I've literally played this in one game yesterday just out of interest. I've just started looking into it, and it's an unusual opening called the Birds opening, named after a guy called Bird. And what's weird about it is that you start with moving the F pawn, the forget about it pawn. Okay, so the first move is pawn to F4. So I'm basically, I'm kind of going in blind for this. I've got no preparation for it. I know very little about the theory of how to respond and anything like that, or really the kind of middle games that you should expect. So I'm kind of going in this fresh. So follow along as we play the game. My opponent replies with a mirror of what I'm doing, which kind of makes sense, although it's not really a mirror because he's moved his queen's bishop's pawn and I've moved my king's bishop's pawn. So he's kind of copying what I'm doing. So anyway, I'll move my knight to F3. So the idea of the Bird's opening is that you kind of play E3, I think, move your bishop out, try and get rid of the bishop, and castle kingside. And then sometimes fianchetto your dark squared bishop, looking down at black's kingside. Okay, so my opponent copies again, brings a knight out. Now I play E3. Now he brings his queen out, okay? A good principle in openings, don't bring your queen out too early. What's his queen doing? It's pinned a pawn on D2, right? And it's not like it's hard for me to get out of that pin. I play knight to C3, a normal developing move, or I play pawn to C3. This is doing very little. It's defending this pawn, I guess. But there are good reasons why you don't develop your queen too early in the game most of the time, and my opponent's going to discover that. Okay, so I play knight to c3, so I'm breaking the pin on this pawn here, and developing a piece and controlling now more of the board. My knights have now got a nice amount of central control. If you look at that, that's all the squares that are covered by my knights, as well as these, and of course these, because my knights are in the center square of the board, right, from here to here, which means they get the full maximum 8 squares under their control, and that is a nice amount of control for knights. Now my opponent plays d6, which is kind of okay. I mean, it potentially releases his dark squared bishop. It also maybe opens up a diagonal towards his king, but that's fine. So anyway, I come in with my bishop now to b5, pinning black's knight. Of course, his bishop is defended by the knight that I've developed. So I now have 3 minor pieces onto the board for my opponent's 1, and his queen could turn out to be a liability. So he develops knight to f6, good move, and I castle kingside. Now he brings out his light squared bishop to pin my knight, but this time against my queen. So I now push b3, with the idea of fianchettoing my dark squared bishop on b2 there. And my opponent brings out his knight. Generally, it's a better idea to make sure you finish developing your minor pieces before you move any of your developed pieces a second time. So here, I could grab the knight. Okay, this knight, yes, it's defending that bishop, but I do actually go ahead and grab the knight because this bishop is maybe not going to be my most powerful one. This one in the corner here, looking at g7, could be my major piece. So I allow black to capture that bishop, and now I play c4. So pay attention now to how many squares this queen has available, right? There's only one route back out of that side of the board for the queen, and a couple of these squares are covered. So the queen moves sideways again to a5, and now I fianchetto my bishop, and the knight now moves in. So what's this knight doing here? I mean, it could come to d3, and maybe attack this bishop, but I just played like queen to c2 and defend, get my queen off the back rank at the same time. It's not too much of a problem. So what I do now is, because this is tactics. Okay, the knight has moved itself into a pinnable position. So it's moved itself onto this diagonal in front of its own queen. Queen is a very high value piece, where I can simply push my bishop to here and pin the knight. So now this knight cannot move. It's pinned itself, okay, unless the queen moves. And now f5 is played, and that's a poor move because it's really weakening this king side of the board. The king's not likely to want to castle on the queen side. So if it were me, I'd want to keep these pawns there, but now he's played it, he can't take it back. That's the thing about pawns. So he's having a prod at this knight, but there's no real issue there. I just moved the knight back to f2, attacking the light square bishop. And now this is really weird because black now spends 3 minutes on his next move and blunders. So the move he plays is b6. Now, can you see the next move, which is essentially winning for white? Okay, and it revolves around the pin. So when you have a piece that's pinned, if you can attack that piece with a piece of lower value, then, and the piece cannot move away, then very often you can capture that piece for free. Okay, so in this case, a knight's a minor piece. It's worth about three pawns. So the only piece worth less than that is a pawn. And very often you do want to attack a pinned piece with a pawn. So the winning move is actually a3. And now this knight can't move, because if it moves away, then bishop takes queen. Okay. So what black tries is swapping off the knight. I just recapture with the queen, and then he moves his rook across, and I snatch the knight with the pawn. But the interesting thing here is the queen has no squares. The queen has absolutely no squares to go to, so the queen is also going to fall. And that was really caused by this terrible move, b6. Okay, so with the pawn on there, and this square covered by my pawn on c4, okay, the only available space for the queen is the a file. So all I need to do is get rid of my pawn on a2, and the queen has nowhere to go after this move is played. Okay, so I attack the knight, we swap off pieces, rook comes across. I mean, he still had time to play, for example, b5 and give the queen an escape, but doesn't spot it. Okay, so this is tactics, simple tactics, basic calculation. We're only looking a couple of moves ahead. Okay, what black needs to be thinking is, if the pawn takes my knight, what happens? And he really ought to be thinking about queen safety here. Okay, so anyway, the queen is lost. The queen falls, and the game now becomes quite a formality, but there is a nice checkmate at the end of this, so I'll show you. So I'm starting to sweep up pawns with my queen now, with checks, and the rook comes in, and then that's actually a really nice little checkmate, because the one escape square really, the queen's controlling these squares, and the one escape square there is covered by my bishop. So there you go. Interesting, I think, to start with an opening that I've never played before. I don't know how I feel about it, but it might be an interesting way to throw opponents off their guard with 1f4. It definitely merits some more research, but it's kind of fun. But I thought it was good to play, at least in an unrated game. So here you can see this is how to improve beyond the 800 to 900 range. You need to know your tactics. You need to spot the danger. Okay, so let's just go back and see where the danger is. First mistake, moving this queen out too early with a pointless attack, right? It wasn't delivering check, it wasn't threatening to capture a piece, there wasn't a fork there, it was just moving the queen out too early because the bishop's still undefended. Okay, so in fact, at the point where the queen comes out, it's the second piece. Black's still got both bishops and a knight still on the back rank. There are reasons why you don't do that, and again, Black has found out. So bishop comes out here, and now after this, the queen still has an escape. So first mistake, bringing the queen out. Second mistake, offering the knight up for a pin, putting it in a pinnable position. Right, that's a tactical error. And now the knight can't move. And then we have this exchange. And even when the knight is attacked here, now Black moves the rook across to d8, completely ignoring queen safety. So he might be thinking, yes, my knight is lost. But you have to think, well, what happens when my knight is captured? What's going to happen with my queen? And, you know, so terrible move really with b6, cutting off the queen's escape. So a series of errors there. Now, the way to improve beyond 900 to 1000 is not to make those kinds of errors. You have to stop and think, right? This guy has basically lost the game with nearly 20 minutes still left on his clock. You've got to use that time. You've got to use that time to think. Think it through. There's nothing, you know, you don't have to be a grandmaster to realise that when that pawn takes that knight, where's the queen got? The queen's got nothing and can't really take the rook because it's defended by the other rook. Okay? And the reason for all of that is I've completed development. I've got my queen off the back rank, my rooks are now connected, and so I'm just simply dominating more of the board than Black is and that Black can. So there you go. He needs to be looking out for those kinds of mistakes. You need to be looking out for those kinds of mistakes. Don't make those kinds of mistakes. And also, when your opponent does offer the pin, for example, you've got to be able to capitalise on it. Okay? So look for this pattern. A piece moves in front of a more important piece. Can that piece be pinned? Yes. Okay? There you go. So, yeah, quick lesson in how to beat players rated 800 to 900, or how to improve beyond that level yourself. Hope it's been useful. See you soon.